This call is now being recorded.
Okay. Well, folks, I'm here with Mr. Kenny Hall. He is uncle to Scott Hall, who you heard here just a couple days ago, and we're gonna talk some cowboy stories. So, Kenny, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I grew up out to Fort Hall, born in 1945. And, my grandparent, he left a homestead from down here at McCammon on the Marsh Creek and ended up out to Fort Hall in 1930-something during the Depression.
Okay.
He worked for U&I Sugar after he left here for a year in the sugar beets, and when he got paid, he got as far as Fort Hall and leased 20 acres and started out there. When we left in 1964, we owned 200 acres, or on 100 acres there on the reservation. And
okay.
Grandpa and the Indians kind of had a disagreement. We was trying to buy another 120 acres and the BIA and Grandpa didn't get along.
I've heard there's been some disagreements over the years with folks, and then the Indians, they don't quite see eye to eye on at times.
So yeah, we sold out up there and we bought a little ranch down here on the Marsh Creek in between Ingham and McCammon, Idaho. And but start the story out, Grandpa, he said right after they'd moved in out there, there's a knock on the door late one night around midnight. And this Frank Bell come in, Indian, and he was drunk. He wanted to arm wrestle Grandpa. Grandpa said he knew if he lost that there wouldn't be any living out there. So he beat the Indian in the arm wrestling match. Then it wasn't too long after that. They was working cattle there on the place. Dad had a big round crow. Grandpa and Dad had a great big round crow. It was made out of 6-inch cellar poles, and it was 12 foot high and 50 foot across. And
well, that's a pretty big round then.
Yeah, and Dad had Indians roping for him. Friday Tindoy and Austin Gould was roping. And Friday was heeling for Austin, and he would put a figure 8 on the hind feet every time he throwed a loop. Never seen anybody rope like him before. I remember I was just a little kid but going along with the story, they was working cattle there, and this Frank Bell come back in the yard drunk again, rode in on a horse. Grandpa was on the ground tending fire, and he pulled a rifle out, threatened to shoot Grandpa. Dad went over the top of the corral and knocked him off the horse, and I guess beat the hell out of him. 10 minutes, it was all over the reservation.
I bet so. Oh, man.
Dad said Grandpa bought him his first rope when he was about 14. And it was a 60-foot rawhide rope.
Okay.
And they lived on the edge of what they called Ross Fork Creek. And it was kind of a big meadow down in there, and it was pretty open. He said his saddle horse was down in there, and he walked down in there, and he said he didn't know it when he started down in there, but there was a Indian bull down there, and them old Hereford bulls at that time is pretty hard to get along with.
Oh, okay.
So he ended up throwing clear to the end of that 60-foot rope and caught his horse and got on his horse just before the bull got to him.
Oof.
And Dad said that there's one of the bulls come into the place there, and he called Fort Hall and told the range man that he better send somebody down to get this bull. And he was mean. He said, don't go out there on foot. He says, this bull will get you. So what does the range man do? He shows up and went wandering out there. And Dad said he seen him, so he grabbed the shotgun and ran out there. And he said he shot the bull, turned him away just before he got to the guy. He said they called. So he left and sent 3 Indians down there, and they had a big old Diamond T truck, and the 3 guys got out of took their horses and went down there, and he said the one guy roped him by the head and the other one roped him by the heels and headed for the truck. They dragged him right up the truck and right into the truck.
Oh man, they didn't even bother trying to lead him up there on the rope. They just drug him, huh?
Yeah, they just dragged him down the road. Dad said when he first started cowboying out there, he went on the roundup down on the bottoms, on the Fort Hall bottoms down there, and it was off the backwaters of the American Falls Reservoir.
Okay.
He said that there was about, I don't know, 3,000 head of cattle at the time. And the big Indian at that time was this Thorpe, and he was from Lincoln Creek. And Dad said he come in riding a thoroughbred horse that he'd paid $5,000 for. This is, back in the, I'd say late 30s.
That's a lot of money for a horse nowadays, but let alone back then.
Yeah. And he said the big old black thoroughbred horse, he had a silver mounted saddle, bridle, and the old boy had a Stetson hat. And, he wore a suit. He said he was all dressed up, but he was the big cattleman at the time at Fort Hall.
Huh.
I knew his grandson. He was a nice guy. But
okay.
He said they'd go into a big rodeo, and guys would circle a big outfit. There'd be 2 guys go in and rope cattle, and he said the one guy would throw a loop over the front shoulder and pick the front feet up, and the other guy would pick the hind feet up. And he said they roped until one of them missed. When the one guy missed, then they'd have to go out and somebody else would come in. But he said for 2 days, them 2 guys roped and never missed.
Oof.
And he said
that's a lot of roping.
Yeah. He said they had a big 2-year-old steer, a bunch of 2-year-old steers in there, and he said they'd make a break and run for the outside, and he said them guys would ride out there and reach down and pick the tail up and take a dolly around the horn and kick their leg over and ride by and roll them old steers out through the meadows. He says they'd go back and stay in the center of the herd then.
I bet so.
That's where my dad learned to cowboy, was down there on the reservation. That's kind of where I learned everything. And then we had an old friend.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was just going to say, I've heard some stories. I didn't really grow up around very many Indians. We weren't anywhere close to a reservation where I grew up. But I've always heard stories of those Indian guys. They'd go out and rope a wild horse and get him stopped, and somebody would jump on, and then they just go ride the sucker through the desert. And we chased a lot of antelope and stuff when I was growing up, but we didn't have any wild horses, and of course I don't think anybody ever got close enough to an antelope to try and rope it and ride it, but I imagine it probably wouldn't have worked too well.
Yeah, Dad said that there was 2 herds of wild horses come in below the house out there one night. And he said the 2 stud horses got in a fight. He said the one was a bay and the one was white. And he said the next morning, he says you couldn't tell which the white horse was or the bay horse. They was both covered with blood.
Oof.
He said that they fought all night long. And then Dad said he run into that one stud horse, got him cut out on the end of a bend one night and tried to catch him, and he said, no way you could catch that horse. He said he was fast. But during World War II, they run a lot of horses out there, and during World War II, there's a couple of 3 Indian and another guy got together in them horses, and they'd bring them into the railroad station at Pocatello and ship them to the Army.
Oh, okay.
Dad lost his one saddle horse. He said he knows that was what happened to him. He said he never did find him. They had one of them gathers, and his horse disappeared.
That's too bad. Well, that's just another case of the government taking something from you, ain't it?
Yeah. But he said when he got this little white horse, and he said he weighed about 750, and he said one day he was wanting to break him to rope, so he tied on hard and fast, and there was a bull in the corral, so he roped the bull over the top of the fence and got off and went to the house. The bull had run the little horse up into the fence, and the horse would back up and run the bull into the fence. He said pretty quick the horse held him.
Oh, I bet. I always kind of liked that teaching a horse to rope. You know, I'd swing rope off of him a little bit, but rather than dragging a log or anything, I just roped something kind of just big enough that it could bog them down a little bit, and just go to the horn and see what happened. You know, if they want to bust in two, I'd go ahead and pinch it off and let that steer kind of bog them down a little bit, and then let the rope run if I need to. But it seemed to work out pretty decent. So I don't know, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but it seems like it worked out all right.
Yeah, I used to rope sagebrush. I was teaching them to rope. I'd just rope a big sagebrush and dally it. If it pulled out, it pulled out. If not, it stopped.
Yeah, good enough.
Yeah, I learned how to break horses with a hackamore. That's what Dad done, and we didn't know where to go. That's why the Indians rode them out there. Mostly was a hackamore. So we started horses in hackamores and didn't really know where the heck to go. So back in 73, 75, I don't remember for sure. Ed Cannell had a spade bit school in Helena, Montana.
Okay.
And the wife and I went to it and got quite an education, and it works.
Yeah.
I did get a couple head finished, but we had a little Appaloosa horse that we started out with, and he was kind of a little outlaw. He wouldn't butt, but he just kind of hard to get along with.
Yeah.
Finally got him, and when he was, he might have weighed 750, 800 pounds, but just a little cat, and he turned out to be a nice spade bit horse. He just had enough. He could lope right alongside a horse that was walking. I've never seen one that was like him. Just as quick as a cat. But, then we had an old friend that when we moved down here on the Morse Crack, we'd knew him before this. He was from the Rockland area over above American Falls. Him and his family was one of the first settlers in that area. And I've got 3 of his bits and a pair of spurs, and they've got to be 100, 150 years old now.
Oh, man.
The one's a John Estrada bit, and the other one I can't find a mark on, but it's the same style. And then the spurs is the same way. I got to collect them after.
I said I don't suppose you'd want to trade out of them, would you?
Well, I'm kind of thinking a little bit. I'm getting to the age that maybe I got 10 bits now.
Yeah.
That I've collected, and 5 sets of spurs. But I'm not quite ready. I'm thinking about it, but I'm not quite ready.
Well, I'll start saving up some money, so when you decide to, I'll be in line. I don't know much about the Buckaroo gear. We were pretty plain Jane as far as our tack went growing up. You know, it was just kind of a finished horse back home with just packing on like a high port with solid cheeks, and and like my saddle's just rough out, a little bit of buck stitching, and I think I've got some conchos on it, but they're nothing real flashy. It's just, it's a completely different style back where I grew up.
Yeah.
And so I'm learning a little bit about the spade bit. I've got a few horses that I'm riding in a Boselle now, or Hackamore, but I grew up just, you throw a snaffle bit in their mouth and progressed until they got to, something a little more severe, but of course with the severity you got to be lighter and it's all a process. It's kind of the same process. It just, or the same end goal, just different process, I guess.
Yeah. The big thing about a spade is you've got to have a really, really light hand. And the horse has got to be broke,
Yeah, that's a big chunk of iron in their mouth.
And that's, and that's something that people make a mistake. That isn't near as severe. A grazing bit will cut a horse's tongue off, and a spade won't, because you can't turn a spade over.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
But as I started to tell you about Edgar's ranch was, I heard once 9,000 acres.
Mm-hmm.
They run 100 head of perching horses.
Oh.
And 75 head of saddle horses, thoroughbreds and Appaloosies. Edgar said they got out once. They took off and they crossed what they call the Lake Channel on the Snake River, west of American Falls.
Okay.
And it's pretty quiet right in there. And he said they went down there and they trailed the horses down to the river, and the horses had crossed the river on the ice.
Oh.
And he said my horse was slick, and he said my cousin horse was sharp shoed. And he said we rode across the river there, gathered the horses up.
Would you mind explaining to folks what a sharp shoe is? I've used them myself, but you're more familiar with them in the country that you grew up. If you wouldn't mind just explaining what that is.
Well, they got corks on the bottom, probably 3/4 of an inch long on the heels and on the toes, and they kind of an ice shoe they called them. And Edgar said they rode across there and picked the horses up and got them to the channel and started them back. And he said the horses turned and run down the ice. And he says his cousin outrun him. And he says every place that horse hit the ice, water come up through the hole. And he said that ice was just floating on top of that water.
Oh, jeez. I bet that was a little unnerving.
Yeah, he said it was a little unnerving. And then about the time the BLM come in, Eliason's horses got out and they went down to the Raft River, which was west of Rockland, and the BLM trailed them. And they went looking for Edgar, telling him that they had these horses penned up and they was going to find him. Because, the BLM had just took over and they was trying to make a show,
Oh, yeah.
Well, Edgar's cousin happened to be riding, and he was sitting on top of the hill when he seen the BLM pull out. He went down and opened the gate and gathered the horses up and drove them back down over top of the hill. When they got back down there was no horses in the corral.
Oh, I bet that made big fans of the BLM too, huh?
Yeah. And Edgar's brother was working in Island Park on the railroad ranch. And he called Edgar and he said, I got a horse up here I want to send home. And so Edgar got on the train and rode the train up to Island Park and spent the night up there, and he got on the horse the next morning and he rode from Island Park to Aberdeen. Took him all day. And he said this horse he didn't dare get off from until he got to some place where he knew that he wouldn't be in trouble.
Yeah.
And he spent the night in Aberdeen and then rode on into Rockland, but he said this horse was really a snake.
Safest place was on his back, huh?
Yeah. Dad said there was an old cowboy come into Fort Hall, and they had kind of an outlaw up there. Everybody, I guess quite a bunch of the guys that tried to ride him couldn't get along with him, so this guy come in. He hobbled the horse, and he rode him there for, a month with one leg tied up.
Oh, jeez.
So finally, he got to the point where he rode him with a leg tied up for a while, and then he put a running W on him. And finally, the guy took off, and he rode him from Fort Hall to Salmon. And he said when he got up there, he said that horse wasn't worth a dime after that. And he said he kind of broke his heart. And then we had a little old Indian out there. He was about 4'11". He wasn't very big. Him and his brother and his sister run relay horses back in the 20s and 30s. All over. They went through to Calgary and all over. And they had this place I live on down here is called the Hot Lakes Place. There used to be a big hot lake on here. It's kind of dried up now, but they had a swimming pool on here. And they had a big rodeo and barbecue and everything for 2 days. And Nels Bartlett and his brother was riding bucking horses and stuff. And this bucking horse took off, and there happened to be one fence clear to the north of us here. And the horse that the old kid was on run through the fence and fell with him. And he died about 2 weeks later. This old Indian was called Kazaz, and he had an eye knocked out, and he'd ride anything, but he had this paint horse that kept bucking him off. So he decided that he'd leave him, so he tied a rope around the horse's neck and put the coils over the saddle horn and tied the rope around his waist. The horse bucked him off, and he didn't get the coils pitched. I guess he drug him for 2 or 3 miles before somebody finally caught up with him.
Oh, man. Scott was kind of telling me about that, how he, instead of just tucking that McCarty into his chinks there, he went ahead and tied it around his waist. And that's some commitment there.
Yeah. The old boy had a great big old, kind of like a Tom Mix hat on that he wore, and he had a big bandana that he wore around his neck, and had that patch on the one eye, and his pants rolled up. He had big cuffs on his pants, wore them little old high-heeled boots. And he rode into Pocatello, and behind the Oasis bar in there, and he'd tie his horse up and go in there and get drunk. They picked him up one night for drunken horse riding through the underpass.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, but I rode a lot with the Indians out there. In fact, I cowboyed with the kid I rodeoed with, and team roped, and rode backing horses with. He was an Indian kid from out there, and we traveled for about 4 or 5 years together before we got married. That stopped all that playing.
Yeah, it tends to do that once you get married. It kind of stops the traveling quite a little bit.
And I was roping for Dad one year. We roped for 2 days. I roped for 2 days for him, and there was this Chuck Niffen. He was another Indian that rode with us, and he was about my dad's age. And I was roping, and my leg was getting sore. I had blisters on my leg from roping and dragging calves. I missed a couple times, and Chuck says, kid, he says, you're not roping jackrabbits in the sagebrush. He says, shake a loop out there and rope. I quit messing after that.
Yeah, that's funny. So, did you grow up? You learned to rope on a slick horn, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah. Well, the horns we had was covered with grass rope or with cotton rope, and I learned to rope with a grass rope.
Okay.
In fact, I've got 3 hemp Ryan ropes in a rope can here that was bought brand new in 1970, never been used.
Really? Huh.
They're 35 foot long, 30 or 35 foot long. But 3 of them's never been used. I did use the one a little bit, but yeah, that's what I learned. And I had a heck of a time with a nylon rope. They just didn't have the feel of a grass.
That's what my dad said too. He was born in '45 as well, and he uses a polyester rope anymore, but he said he never could get used to the feel of a nylon. And I talked to one of his friends the other day, and he grew up down in the Texas Panhandle, and he has never dallied a day in his life. He didn't even know what dallying was until he started seeing some of the team ropers with rubber on the horn, but he always tied hard and fast, and they doctored a lot of wheat pasture cattle that way. And it's kind of interesting seeing how different people cowboy, just depending on where you grew up and where you learned, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I roped calves for a while, and that's the only time I tied on hard and fast.
Yeah.
It was fun. Like I said, I grew up on the reservation and rode with a bunch of the Indians out there, and a bunch of the kids that I rodeoed with, they lived out there. They white kids too. But that's where we learned the cowboys out there, and we'd slip down on the bottoms and gather some of the Indians' horses up to ride, and drive them up into a little arena we had, and some of the guys would ride them, and we'd sneak them back down on the bottoms and turn them loose.
That's funny.
Yeah, then I learned you get down in them bottoms and you was in a lot of bogs and mud. You had to learn them horses. Some of them liked it and some of them didn't. A lot of them didn't like that mud, and they'd beat you up pretty near as bad as a backing horse.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know whether I got a lot more stories or not.
Well, Scott told me I had to ask you about wintering the horse herd in the junipers. He said you had to tell that story.
Yeah, Grandpa said that at the time, it was during the Depression, he said there'd be a train come in and they'd have a carload of hay and a carload of oats. And he said hay sold for $3 a bale and a sack of oats was $4. And he said before you could get there, it was all gone. They had about between 12 and 15 head or 20 head of horses. And they drove them just above the house where I'm at now up to a big juniper grove. And they put them up there in November. And the 1st of April, or the 1st of March, they was able to get back up in there. And they said the horses would eat all the bark and limbs and everything they could off the junipers after they couldn't get any grass or anything. And then they started eating their manes and tails. He said they brought all them horses down and put them on feed and went to cutting hay as soon as they got a little strength.
Jeez.
He said they saved every one of them. He said they didn't lose a horse.
Really? Huh. Living off of junipers. That's pretty crazy.
we had about 35, 40 head of horses here when we first come down here, and there was a dry farmer above us, and he had a big catcher on the back of his combine, and it would make a great big stack, probably a ton bale or maybe 2 tons of just straw.
Mm-hmm.
And he left them up there, and Dad asked him, he says, "Can I put my horses up there?" And he says, "As soon as it freezes," he says, "Yeah, go ahead." we throwed them horses up there. There was one Shetland pony with them Dad had bought for somebody. My dad thought as long as he had horses, he had money.
Yeah.
He used to do a lot of trading. And
oh, yeah.
we went up there, and he rode up there, probably the end of February, and he had to tromp a trail to get them down out of there. But they'd went through all that straw up there. He brought them down, and they was in better shape than the horses we had down here feeding.
Boy, that depression. Oh, go ahead.
Well, this wasn't during the Depression. This was just, 35, 40 years ago.
Oh, okay. It's just a tough winter.
Yeah, it was. When we first moved down here, it was nothing to have 4 foot of snow on the level. It's been a while since we had that, but before Dad got killed, right after we moved down here, the neighbor Edgar, he had a team and was feeding with a team and sleigh, and Dad had a tractor and a pickup, and he decided that was the way to feed, so he bought him a team and got him a sleigh, and that's the way we fed after that, was with a team and sleigh. And Scott's dad, he worked at Sun Valley. He drove a sleigh up there and hauled people in the winter for 3 or 4 years. And, he's a pretty good teamster.
Yeah, I worked on a ranch up in Montana, and we used a tractor and a hay buster to feed up there, but I know that one of the neighboring ranches, they still fed with a team and a sleigh, and it was pretty neat to watch. I didn't really envy them because them in Montana winters are brutal cold, but it was neat to watch. Like I said, I don't say I wished I would have been them, because that tractor was plenty warm, but it was neat to watch.
Well, I had a moose hide I traded an Indian kid out of one night when we was out partying, and had it tanned, and we'd get ready to go somewhere on that sleigh, and we'd take that moose hide and lay over our laps, and away we'd go. We got snowed in for a couple of days here, and we fed our cattle, and Dad decided it was time to go to coffee over to the cafe, so we took off with the team and sleigh and drove down the road. My cousin lived about 2 miles down the road here, 1.5 miles, and we picked him up, went on down a ways further and picked up another neighbor, and we went on over to the cafe and had coffee.
That's funny. Yeah, we didn't have that type of snow out on the flatlands. If it snowed that much, it was kind of a natural disaster. You know, when the snow's like that out on the plains, we usually get the wind with it, and boy, it gets pretty treacherous getting out there when that wind snow is whipping around.
Yeah, and that's what we liked when we moved down here. We're kind of behind the mountain, and we don't get the wind out to Fort Hall. Dad said after he moved down here, he said, "Good heaven, I didn't know I could walk up standing up straight." Because the wind blew out there too.
Yeah, I've told people you can always tell somebody that's been in the wind a little bit, because when you walk outside, you just kind of put your head down and lean into it, and you don't really look up. You just kind of plow through it till you get to where you're going, and then you can kind of pick your head up. Otherwise, you lose your hat, you lose your orientation. You just gotta plow through it.
Yeah, we had an old friend. He grew up in Oklahoma. He said they had 200-pound rock out on the porch with a log chain on it. And he said, you walk out and it was about a foot off the ground, you'd go to work. And he said, it was standing straight up, you'd go back in the house.
Yeah, that's about right. I grew up about 8 miles from the Oklahoma border, and my dad has told stories about, he grew up in the 40s, but in the 50s there was a drought just almost as bad, if not worse, than the Dust Bowl, and we were right in that Dust Bowl country, and those dust storms would blow in, and it'll be just calm as can be. And all of a sudden you just smell plowed dirt, and you look up and it looks like a rain cloud on the horizon. But you better grab a hold of something or get inside real quick, because then that dust hits and you can't see anything, and it just, you breathe it and it just sandblasts you. But it's he said his mom they'd take some gunny sacks and get them wet and just stuff them in the cracks of the windows, and anywhere there was a crack, they were stuffing gunny sacks in there to try to keep the dust out. But it didn't do much good. He said them gunny sacks and towels and everything, it was just a sheet of mud when they'd unroll them.
Yeah. Yeah, we had dust storms out to Fort Hall, but nothing like. But we was out in an area that there was a lot of sagebrush and cedar trees and junipers, and we had a dust storm come over once, and it stayed just above the trees. Never seen anything like that. But down where we was at, it wasn't bad, but up above us there was a heck of a storm. You couldn't see nothing. And when the wind all stopped and everything, there was a buzzard dead in the yard, and I'd never seen one before.
Huh. That's crazy.
The first buzzard I ever seen.
Boy, we saw them quite a bit back home, but it was it's kind of tough country out, from I guess from kind of the Mississippi west. You gotta have some pretty thick skin to live out here, especially if you're living outside of town. It's you gotta have a little bit of survival instincts.
Yeah. Yeah, I rode colts from the time I was 14 till I was 68. I kind of decided maybe, in fact, the last pair of colts, I just traded the one to Scott for a spade bit and a 38 357 rifle. And that was the last colt. He's about 12 years old now, and Scott said he just sent him to the Crow Reservation, so said they really like him up there. He was a good horse, but I just getting crippled up to where I just can't ride them colts no more.
Yeah. I was adopted, and my dad had a lot of horses growing up. Well, nothing near like y'all had up there, but we didn't have near the big open country either. We had a lot of cattle around us, but it was a big pasture back there would be like 1,000 acres. But it's all for the most part private ground. There's not much BLM stuff. We're kind of on the very eastern edge of where the BLM type country starts. But I grew up riding colts, and it was not something I wanted to do, but it was just kind of forced down my throat. And then as I got older, I got to where I kind of enjoyed it, and so I still do it now. But I know first starting, it was not my cup of tea, and but I had to do it, so I learned to like it, I guess, and got kind of halfway decent at it, I guess. Yeah,
I always thought that if the horse didn't try you a time or two, he wasn't worth anything. The older I got, the more I thought, maybe it's good they don't.
I got to where I didn't like to hit the ground very well, so I learned, I don't know if I learned how to ride so much as I learned how to stay on, and then I got to where I was fairly decent at talking them out of bucking, so It seemed like it made life a little bit easier.
Yeah, after I got married, I kind of had to just ride on the weekends and stuff. I ended up driving concrete truck for a company, and so I helped Dad run cattle here and on the weekends and evenings when I got home. And I rode colts when on the weekends. It didn't
Yeah.
But yeah, I was riding a thoroughbred colt one day. And we was coming up out of a big wash down here, and I was riding alongside my wife, and we was probably 40, 50 feet in the air, and this colt just stepped off in the air, and down we went.
Oof.
It gives you kind of a thrill when you drop 40 feet and there's nothing under you.
Oh, I bet. I bet it was a hell of a crash when you landed too.
It wasn't as bad as you'd think, but it made you think awful hard.
No, I bet.
That was a big thoroughbred colt. My dad traded horses all the time, and we had a horse trader come in out of Wyoming all the time, and he'd always have a horse on the truck. Dad would trade him out of it, and we'd ride him for a year or so, and then we'd trade him to him for something else. And one friend of Dad's down here, he bought horses for this guy. And one summer, Dad and Dick went through 500 head that they bought.
Oh, wow.
Just out of the valley here, or out of the area. I won't say out of the valley, but between Blackfoot and here. He traded for a 6-year-old dun mare.
Okay.
And she was about 17 hands high.
Oof, little guy.
A little mare. I mean, a nice mare, but she was started when she was a 2-year-old and then hadn't been rode.
Oh, okay.
And we saddled her up and I went to riding her. She done pretty darn good. Rode her with a pencil bozel. She just handled halfway decent. One day I was at work and the wife had just had a hysterectomy. She'd only been out of the hospital a couple of weeks. And she saddled the horse up and went down the road to the neighbors and got off and was visiting with them. Tightened the mare's cinch up and went to get back on her, and she blowed up. She was cinching.
Oh.
We had a couple of battles with her. We was running cattle on them across the river over here, and they made a big run down the creek on me, and I went to get ahead of them, and I bailed off in the marsh creek and started up and to cut them off, and I hit a hole, and the water was coming right over the front of the saddle, hitting me right in the chest, and it was about 8 o'clock in the morning.
Oh,
it was
man.
pretty chilly.
I bet so. If you weren't awake then, you were awake real quick.
Yeah, I got ready I went and got on her one morning, and she went to backing with me, and I'd pull her head around, and she'd just give it right to me, and she done that about 3 or 4 times, and then all of a sudden she took that away from me, and I lit on my fist and broke 2 ribs. Then we rode he was a POA quarter horse, Appaloosa horse for this spring.
Okay.
We started him, and just a nice horse, tough. And we rode him, and heck, the wife took off on him one time when I was gone, went clear up on the mountain with him all alone, and nobody knew where she was. Let him go that winter, and the next spring, he was getting ready to go chase some cows, and I saddled him all up, and I was putting my chaps on it. So Deborah said, step up on him and turn him around a time or two. She stepped up on him, and he blowed up and went to backing with her. She got off from him, and I went and got on him and knocked the hell out of him a little bit, and everything was fine. We rode all summer and got along pretty decent, and then that fall we was down on the roundup cutting cows out for this guy we rode for. Picked this one big heifer up. We'd been riding about 6 hours, getting close to noon. We was going to stop for noon. I kind of leaned over in a stirrup and went and cut this cow off, and he ducked out from under me. So I rode for 9 hours on him. I didn't get off from him again. But he didn't get better. After that, he'd lay for you. He'd catch you off balance just a little bit. Then he'd blow up and try to buck. We was across the river again gathering cows. I don't know what happened, but he blowed up and went to bucking, and he bucked till I give out. He couldn't buck hard, but he just kept at me until I run out of wind, and I stepped off from him. Dad caught him, and I got my hair back, and I got back on him. And that day, I hung my spade bit on him. I'd been just riding with a hackamore, and we made about 3 steps, and he tried me again, and that time I picked the spade bit up, and I rattled his head with it. But I never got where he could trust him, and the guy I was riding him for had a wooden leg. So he had to be pretty darn general, but he was, if somebody had him that rode him hard every day, I think he'd have been a good horse, but where I'd only get a chance at him about once a week, well, it just wasn't enough for him.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a
couple like that.
I had a dun horse I sent to the sale here about a year ago that was like that. My dad had raised this colt. It was out of probably our best brood mare. She was a Poca Bueno Go Man Go bred mare, and bred her to a big running quarter horse stud, and he was a really, really well put together little red dun horse. And my nephew had him for a little while, and I guess he rode him, got to where he was kind of getting along pretty good with him, and then he had a bad day one day, and I said it was like starting all over from the beginning. So I tried my hand at him, and he wasn't really a bronchi sucker. You know, he would buck a little bit, but it was more just kind of a running buck. He'd just kind of sprint out across there and kick his ass up a little bit, but nothing real nasty about him. But he was kind of a runaway prick, and I had him coming around pretty decent. He was actually kind of halfway handy, and I was swinging a rope on him, and I was just about to the point where I was gonna see how he'd do roping, and then I took about a week off on him. I went back to Kansas and went deer hunting, and when I came back, it was just like my nephew said, it was like starting back over at day one, and we had a pretty big wreck there in the feedlot. He was wanting to run off, and I was trying to pull this little kind of Hereford cross heifer, and she was wanting to run, and he was wanting to run, and next thing I know, he slipped. It rained a little bit, and down he went, and I hung a foot in the stirrup, and he dragged me about 2 or 3 strides before I got kicked loose, and then that sucker hit the afterburners, and there was 2 gates set across the alley down the ways, and he blasted through both of those like it was nothing, bent the gate rod back into about a 90-degree angle, and then he hit the gate at the top of the alley, which was log chained, and didn't make it through that one. I think it kind of catapulted him back in on his ass, and then he gathered himself up and came back the other way. We got him slowed down and stopped, and every time I stepped off him after that, he'd pull loose and take off running, and I don't even think he was looking at where he was running. You know, I caught a glimpse of him a couple times when he did that, and his eyes were kind of rolled back in his head, and he wasn't even seeing anything. He was just running. Well, that's the kind of horse that'll get a guy killed, so I took him over to Fallon, and that was the end of him.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want them kind. There's too many good horses to have one like that.
Yeah, that's for sure. It was a shame because, like I said, he was bred really nice, and he was put together, real shapy type of horse. It could have been worth a little bit of money if we could have done anything with him, but it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, the wife had a It was an EasyJet stud horse, the EasyJet stud. He's grandson out of EasyJet. Real nice. I mean, she won reining on him and everything, and some girls had borrowed him in one queen contest, and we roped on him a little and worked cows. And he's 18 years old and started tipping over. And we couldn't figure out what the heck we done. Everything, bought a new saddle and put on him and just tried everything. And he went down with her one day. Oh, I was in a hurry. There was some cows getting away, and I got on my horse and didn't stay with her and took off. And he went to running with her and went down and hit just barely missed going through a barbed wire fence. It cut her underneath the eye and everything. And I got back and got a hold of him and took her in the house and tore her pants and cut her and spot or two, not bad, but just scraped her up. And Mike was with me, Scott's dad, and he unsaddled the horse. I come back up, saddled him all up, and got back up on him, and he went down with me. And I got back up on him and kind of knocked the hell out of him, and up over the mountain we went, and I was gone for about 2 hours. We brought him home and rode him the rest of the year, and he was fine. Had nephew ride him. We was down in the indoor arena, and we rode him that winter. That spring, we rode in the pen. I was riding a colt. I just got him all saddled up. I stepped up on him, and Deborah went and stepped up on the big roan horse, and he went running backwards, and I slipped in behind her and got him stopped, and she got off. And I went in and called the meat buyer, and he said he was coming through and stopped, and we shipped him. Pretty near broke our heart. I mean, we'd done everything on him. She'd won reining on him in 2 or 3 places. But it's something that went screwy. We don't know what happened.
Well, there's sometimes they just do that. You can't really explain it. They just kind of go bad on you, I guess.
Yeah, he must have had a tumor or something. The only thing we could figure.
Yeah.
That would.
Well, Kenny, I think I probably took enough of your time for today, but I do appreciate you visiting with me.
Well, I appreciate time. Tell a story or two. It's been a while. I tried to get Scott was going to record some stuff, and heck, I can't get him slowed down. Now he's out of the country, so.
Yeah. Well, he told me, like I said, he kind of really grasped what I was trying to do with this whole podcast thing, and he said you'd sure be a good one to visit, and boy, he's right. So, if it's all right with you, I wouldn't mind doing this again a time or two, or until you run out of stories or you get tired of talking to me, I guess.
Well, somebody else you should talk to is Scott's dad. He rode for a big outfit over in Wyoming. He was on the racetrack for a while, and one of the guys in Denver with him had a big ranch, and he took Mike over there, and Mike rode the fall with him. But yeah, Mike's been around a little bit, rode for some outfits.
Well, cool. I'd sure like to talk to him too, so we'll maybe set it up. But like I said, if you're willing, I'll call back in another time, and we'll shoot the shit some more. All
right, sounds good. Well, I appreciate it, Matt.
Well, I thank you very much. You bet. Have a good one. All right.
I wish there was some way you could send that to me. I don't know how to.
Well, I can definitely do that. Do you know how to use email or anything?
Well, we got an email account here on our computer.
Okay. Well, I can definitely send it to you, and it's once you figure out where to go, then I've got a whole bunch of episodes, and a lot of it's just me talking a bunch of nonsense, but I've talked to a couple of older guys that have got some good stories. Like I said, my dad's been on, and he's told some good stories. He's cowboyed quite a bit, and then he was involved in politics for a while, still is a little bit, and so there's a lot of good stories to be told, and I'm trying to get all of them I can. So people like to listen to them, and I think it's important for people to hear them too. Get a perspective of what it takes to put a steak on your plate, and the cowboy, what it actually means to go cowboy. And we're not fighting bad guys and Indians all the time. We're taking care of cows and trying not to get killed by our horses. So it's a little different than what a lot of people think. And so I think we've done a pretty decent job so far of kind of, getting rid of some of the myths that are out there, but it doesn't hurt to hear a few more stories in the meantime. So yeah, I'll get a hold of you and make sure that you can listen to it, and we'll try it again one of these days as well.
All right. Well, thank you. We'll talk to you again.
All right. Thanks, Kenny. Have a good one.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
All right. Bye.